No, I'll just recap before we get on. The hijack, the construct which comes down, this is where we're coming now into this part of it, as it operates within human society, and how all these different areas, here we go, politics, banking, secret societies, big pharma, pharmaceuticals, all actually being controlled or focusing on that central force and imprisoning us, enslaving us mentally, emotionally in this tiny frequency band. And that's the thing. They have to get us to believe we have no power. Now, this is an interesting area because this is a certain, what you might call, timeline or sequence line. And if you're outside of that sequence line, you can see further down it. You can see things coming. And also, if you have a projected agenda and you can access these secret societies that know the projected agenda, then you can write prophetic novels about the future that turn out with hindsight to be incredibly accurate because they're not novels. You knew what the plan was. And like I said ages ago today, if you know the plan and nothing intervenes to stop the plan, you can predict the future. And so they can if you lock into this timeline, this sequence line, through inner secret societies, you know what's coming. And one of those secret societies is the Fabian Society, which has based in London, of course, and it has the logo of the wolf in sheep's clothing. I mean, giving it away or what? And interestingly, a year ago, Tony Blair, he's Fabian. If there's ever a half-truth in a Blair speech, it's a typing error. And people have said to me over the years give me some books that would tell us what this plan is and where he wants to go. Well, here's two. 1984, George Orwell, that's the police state and all that stuff, perpetual war part of it. Then there's Aldous Huxley, that's 1932, that's 1948. Brave New World, that's all the drug and genetic and mind manipulation part of it. And it just so happens that George Orwell, Eric Blair, went to Eton College, and his tutor in French at one point was Aldous Huxley, who introduced him to the Fabian Society, and that's where they got their information about the projected agenda. And he wrote to almost to his death to trying to expose it. And some people say, and they may well be right, that 1984 is code because 1984 was the 100th anniversary of the Fabian Society. So when you can get access to this projected agenda, you become an instant prophet. And there was a man in 1969 called Dr. Richard Day, and he was a Rockefeller insider. The Rockefeller family, massively part of this. And he worked for Planned Parenthood and all this stuff, which is a Rockefeller organization. And so he had the inside projection. And he, for some bizarre reason, no one seems to know why, he spoke to these pediatricians in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1969, and he said, put your pens down, don't make any notes, turn off any recording equipment, because I'm going to tell you how the world's going to change. And he proceeded to tell them what was going to happen in the world. And one of the pediatricians did take notes and then typed them up later, and then before he died in 2004, he did some series of interviews saying what Dr. Richard Day had said that night in 1969. Okay, this is what he said, just some of it. And when we look at this, and the one or two things that will follow, anyone that thinks this is not a coordinated agenda for humanity, well, crikey, have a look at it. This is what Dr. Richard Day said, 1969. Technology used for reproduction without sex. Families to diminish importance. Euthanasia and the demise pill. Limiting access to affordable medical care makes eliminating the elderly easier. New difficult to diagnose and untreatable diseases. Suppressing cancer cures as a means of population control. Education as a tool for accelerating the onset of puberty and evolution. Reconstructing education as a tool of indoctrination. More time in schools, but pupils wouldn't learn anything. Controlling who has access to information. Schools as the hub of the community, in other words, taking over from parents in terms of power. Changing laws to promote moral and social chaos. The encouragement of drug abuse to create a jungle atmosphere in cities and towns. Promote alcohol abuse. Restrictions on travel, the need for more jails, no more psychological or physical security, crime used to manage society, curtailment of US industrial preeminence, shifting populations and economies, tearing out the social roots, sports as a tool of social engineering and change, sex and violence inculcated through entertainment, implanted ID cards, microchips, food control, weather control, knowing how people respond, making them do what you want, falsified scientific research, see human-caused global warming, use of terrorism, surveillance, implants, and televisions that watch you, the arrival of the totalitarian global system. Then there was the Frankfurt School that came out of that city in Germany in the 20s and 30s and then went to America. And this was their wish list all that time ago. The creation of racism offences, continual change to create confusion, the teaching of sex to children, huge immigration to destroy national identity, the promotion of excessive drinking, emptying the churches, undermining anything that is socially cohesive, legal system with bias against victims of crime, dependency on the state or state benefits, control or dumbing down of the media, encouraging the breakdown of the family. Now, this was a document dated 1979 that came to light in the 1980s called Quiet Weapons for Quiet Wars, and it was a manual from inside government agencies explaining how you collectively social engineer and manipulate the population. And this is some of the things that it said. Media. Keep the adult public attention diverted away from the real social issues and captivated by matters of no real importance. Media? What? Schools. Keep the young public ignorant of real mathematics, real economics, real law, and real history. Entertainment. Keep the public entertainment below a 6th grade level. Work. Keep the public busy, busy, busy with no time to think back on the farm with the other animals. It also said, keep the public ignorant and you have less public organisation. Create preoccupations and you lower defences. Attack the family unit, what a recurring theme that is in all of them, and you control the education of the young. Give out less cash and more credit and you trigger more self-indulgence and social engineering data. Encourage social conformity and you make programming easier. Minimize protests about tax and you maximize the input of personal economic data while minimizing enforcement problems. Stabilize consent and you stabilize control. Tighten control of variables, like individuality I've said here, and you have greater predictability. Maximize control and you minimize resistance to control. Collapse the currency and you destroy faith in a country and each other, all of which are happening. Control of perception, that's what social engineering is. And this, again, is the paddle stores, because I'm going to put together a series of dots here relating absolutely to the society and the world we're living in today, to show that it's all coordinated and all these things actually are happening at one unit with one force behind them. As they say, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. And that's the part when you start learning what the world's like. So, here's some coordinates. How do they do it? How do they do it? How do a few manipulate billions of people? Well, they create pyramidal structures like Russian dolls, one doll inside a bigger doll inside a bigger doll. They're pyramids inside pyramids inside pyramids. So a bank is a pyramid and it goes into a bigger pyramid until there's the pyramid of the whole banking system, and at the top of that the same people control it. Same with the transnational corporations, etc. And knowledge is held in the hands of the few at the peak of the pyramid or the inner core of the spider's web, whatever you want to use, and the public are kept in ignorance of that massively in terms of that, the nature of reality itself. These people, presidents, prime ministers, heads of the World Bank and NATO, they're just here today, gone tomorrow, front men and women who are there to impose through legislation the will of the few in the shadows. And like I say, there's this compartmentalized pyramidal structure where in the end, all these different, apparently at this level of society, unconnected areas, in the end, go up to the same network of families that are manipulating them, and thus that is what is behind the institutions of human control and the direction of human society. And we are holding the whole thing together because they are there, and we, silly sods, are holding the whole structure together. And if we walk away, it collapses. Our enslavement is dependent on our cooperation. We withdraw it, house of cards comes down. This is a key area within that construct of organisations that is very influential. The Round Table with Secret Society started in Britain. The first head of it was Cecil Rhodes, who was the front man for the House of Rothschild. They created the Royal Institute of International Affairs in London in 1920. Watch the think tanks. That's one of the massive ways that they manipulate. Council on Foreign Relations came in 1921 in America, still massively influential in American foreign policy. Then the United Nations came, and the Bilderberg Group in 1954, a Trilateral Commission in 1973, and the Club of Rome. I'll come to that eventually in this section, because that was specifically created to use the environment as a means to justify human enslavement and changes in human society. And that symbolizes how it all comes together in the end under one force, one roof. And they have what I call the blueprint. It's something I find everywhere. Whether it's national, international, or local, the same blueprint occurs of secret societies and groupings and networks manipulating their sphere of influence in the way that I described earlier. And because of the way it works, it's actually holographic. Every part of this global network is a smaller version of the whole. So when you come down into something like the Isle of Wight, which is like a few miles by a few miles, it is structured to dictate what happens on the Isle of Wight in exactly the same basic form as the greater hologram, which is dictating the direction of world society. And these people who are put forward in our democratic free society for us to choose from to lead us, they're spewed out by these same people, these same forces, these same networks. So whether Romney wins this coming election or Obama wins it, bloody irrelevant. There's areas where Obama will be worse, there's areas where Romney will be worse, but they're controlled by the same force. And these presidents of Democrats and Republicans, just like, Labour and Conservative, these are just labels for masks on the same bloody face. And this is a great symbolic image of the way it works. I'm giving the American example. I could be talking about anywhere. In America, they have the Republican Party. The previous one in power, apparent power, was Bush, George Bush. And behind him, quite acknowledged in the mainstream media, were a network of people known as the neocons or neoconservatives. And these are people like Wolfowitz and Pearl and the Bush family as a whole, and Cheney and Rumsfeld and John Bolton and all these people. And they controlled the Bush administration and the direction that it took. Then along came Obama, and they have, in the Democratic Party, what I call the democons. These are the Clintons, these are Zbigniew Brzezinski. I put Kissinger in it this time because he's an advisor to Obama, but he's usually over there. George Soros, the financier, he's in there. But the whole point is that at the next stage, after these groupings around that control the parties, the next stage is the same force controlling both of them. So it doesn't matter who gets in, because that's in anyway. This is the way it works. But that's hidden, so we think we're free because we have a vote. This is lovely, the illusion of free choice. Left, right, slaughterhouse, which one do you fancy? And so we're looking at this election now between a mask on the face and another mask on the face. They still think we're different. Well, we're increasingly sussing it, darling. This wonderful front page of Private Eye with Blair and Cameron, world's first face transplant, a success. I mean, it just captured the whole bloody thing. I mean, look at it. Obama was going to be different from Bush. He's Bush on bloody steroids. I mean, it's ridiculous. This is a great one, too. Here we go. Oh, I'm going to vote Democrat next time. Oh, I'm going to vote Republican next time. What are we seeing now? Oh, the opinion polls for Labour, they're above Conservative. Oh, we go Conservative or Labour. Doesn't matter! Same forces in control. These people are just pawns. They're moved around the pot by a force that we don't see. So when people say George Bush was big brother, he's not even little sister. Same with Obama. No. They're just here today, gone tomorrow people for a force that people don't know exists. Change the face, change the mask, but the face is still the same. And so we see this going on here. Oh, look, in the news, it says, and we don't see the one force that's manipulating apparently opposing sides in the public arena. As the cards are moved around and we are led to believe they're all random events, like heck they are. And it's all being done, let us not forget, by bloodlines and networks with the deletion of empathy. Thus, anything goes in what they do. Now, what they want is a structure something like this, for a simple reason. If there's a few and you want to control the many, you have to centralize decision-making. Like I said earlier, the more diversity there is, the less power the centre has. And so we've seen this incessant centralisation of power in all areas of our lives, in media ownership, in political parties, in government with the European Union, etc., globalisation. And they want, under a world government, which is they're already talking about, and this World Central Bank they're already talking about, a single currency, electronic. There'd be no cash, for which there are fundamental implications for freedom. You go into a store now, or a garage or whatever, and you hand over electronic money, and they say, sorry, it won't accept your card. You still have the opportunity to pay cash, although it's going out of circulation so fast. Once it's gone out of circulation and there's only that electronic money, and they want one single electronic currency eventually, then that's deciding if you purchase what you purchase and if you can purchase at all. And of course, dissidents of the system will very quickly go off the Christmas card list of the computer. Under that, they want, or microchip population too, or they want a world army, which would impose the will of the world government. Now, we've got so far in this, I've been using this graphic now since way back in the 1990s, and we've reached the point now where we have a de facto world government. We call it the UN Security Council, or the G8, or whatever the G they're coming up with next, because what those few countries do is they decide that this country's behaviour is not acceptable, and therefore they're going to do something about it. And what do? They send in the de facto world army, called NATO, or the American or British military, to do what the few say must happen in these other countries. And what we're seeing is merely the de facto version of what they want to be enshrined in law. A world government, anyone in the world that doesn't accept the will of the world government, in goes the world army to sort them out. And then they want these regions and stuff under that, the European Union, the American Union, the Pacific Union, African Union. They probably want a few more as well.